This was an amazing presentation, Prime Minister Papadimos. Thank you so much. We'll continue our agenda now with an innovation spotlight, the future of human longevity. And for that session, it's my pleasure to invite Haya Al Saud, Vice President of Impact and Insight for the Evolution Foundation from Saudi Arabia, and Mohammed Yusuf Sulaiman, the CEO of the Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Technology from Malaysia.
Okay, all right.
Yusuf, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Roberto. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Innovation Spotlight, and the spotlight is not on me, but on Dr. Haya Al Saud. She's the Vice President Impact and Insight of Evolution Foundation, based in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but I was informed a global outreach organization. She informed me this is her first attendance to the Global Innovation Summit, but I think it's very timely, and I think what she will share with us will be bringing a new dimension to our discussion. Because yesterday and today we were talking a lot about talent, but we're talking from the side of how do we develop talent and talent coming up from the universities. Whereas longevity will be talking about the talent and people at the other end of the stick. Do we still need to address that? And if we do not, then the underproductive group here will actually put a stress on the productive people, because they now have to worry about how to place these people in terms of supporting them and etc. So it's also very important to see when we look at crisis. We mentioned about energy crisis and others. We also have to see this longevity as a predicament that is right under our nose, and if we not deal with it, it can become a time bomb which will explode very much in the future. So what I think Dr. Haya will give us in context of the future of human longevity is not only talking about issues, but also solutions on how we can actually address this. So without further ado, Dr. Haya,
thank you, Dr.
May I invite you to make your presentation?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So thank you very much. First, I would like to thank GIS for inviting me to speak today. Thank you, Deborah. So today I just want to highlight an important issue that I think everyone should take into consideration. All of us here, when we talk about humanity's biggest challenges, first thing that comes in mind is climate change, war, world hunger. Aging is not really considered as a problem. But I think we should think otherwise. Aging is actually one of humanity's biggest problems nowadays. Aging in terms of unhealthy aging. When you look at worldwide data from the National Institute of Aging, there are 500 million people that are 64 years of age and above. There is an increased projection of these elderly people from 6% to 18%, so almost an increase to up to 1 billion across the globe by year 2050. For all of us here, this is great news. However, reality is otherwise. The extra years that we actually live, unfortunately, there are years that are actually decade. Apologies, I didn't press these buttons. So there are actually years that are decade with disease. The reason why is when people age, they actually age with the development of age and age-related diseases. So that doesn't mean that we really live extra years of life. We really live extra years of life where there is decreased quality of life and increase of morbidity. Not only that, recently we've also seen that there is a decrease, or a great decrease, almost 70% in global fertility rates. If we take Korea specifically, global fertility rate per woman is actually less than 1, which is much lower than the replacement rate across the globe. Talking about my country, Saudi Arabia, it used to be 7 per woman, and now it's down to 2.2, and the trend line is actually declining. Also, we need to take into consideration that with these elderly people, there's an increase in health expenditure. So this is a ballooning, actually, problem that's actually happening. So when we couple all of these elements together, there is an economic disaster that we really need to take into consideration in the future. Not only that, sometimes when we look at the human side of us and the more realistic side of us, in reality, there are more and more women that are dropping out of work because they're taking care of an elderly. And this is something that we see across the globe, and I see me personally with my family. So what should be done? There are multiple efforts across the globe that are happening now, but they're focusing on how do we extend lifespan. The focus should be shifted to how do we increase healthy lifespan, or what's called health span. Also, as a scientist, I mean, I'm a scientist in genetics. I've been working in genetics for a long time, especially in research. My focus was on how do we treat disease. However, we really need to shift our thinking to more on how do we prevent disease early in life so we don't actually develop these diseases. Of course, if we do that, we'll increase the quality of life, we'll increase productivity in elderly, we will also decrease healthcare costs globally. So what I'm saying, is it realistic? Is it scientifically feasible? I mean, I'm a scientist, a lot of people here are scientists. Actually, it is. So accelerated aging that is caused by disease is actually caused by, they call them 9 hallmarks of aging, or 9 biological processes that actually collectively work together to accelerate the aging process. There are scientific feasible studies that have tried to mitigate the risk and target these 9 hallmarks of aging, especially in mice, where we saw an increase in 5-year health span in animals. So there is an opportunity, and this is how we suggest and we recommend to focus on. However, the optimistic side, there are multiple challenges, and I think this is a very interesting slide because since yesterday, you're going to realize that these challenges are across sectors. So it's not only in R&D, but it's across sectors that a lot of interesting talks that we listened to yesterday. So I'll start from the top to the bottom. The first is, in the aging field, there's clear scientific uncertainty. So we need to investigate the science and the biology that actually causes this accelerated aging. Second, as all sectors, there's insufficient funding, and that's what needs to be done to support the science. There's also lack of coordination. So how do scientists speak to investors and vice versa? How do we accelerate science to go to the market? There's also a clear lack of awareness. A lot of people are not aware of what does aging and accelerated aging or unhealthy aging means, and this is something that's very important. And lastly, there is difficulty in regulatory environment, and I think we all got exposed to that, especially during COVID. So we need to develop novel regulatory frameworks that can support accelerating science to the market in the aging field. So now I'm going to introduce Hevolution Foundation. So Hevolution Foundation is a nonprofit organization that is headquartered in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It is a global organization. It has a budget of up to $1 billion US. The main focus of Hevolution Foundation is to address all the challenges that I mentioned in the previous slide. What we want to focus on in terms of roles, first, how do we support the funding of science and understanding the biological mechanism of aging? Second, how do we increase the coordination? So how do we accelerate the science into the market? How do we make right investable opportunities, specifically in the preclinical phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials? Third is we want to support a lot of research, and we might think of having internal research activities. And the last is how do we actually develop a global strategic roadmap to reach our strategic objectives in extending healthy lifespan for the benefit of all humanity. Obviously, this is, in a nutshell, what Hevolution Foundation wants to work on, but there is a bigger vision that I think we need to address. The bigger vision, these are activities that we want to do, these are roles that we want to do, but there's a bigger vision there. First is how do we ensure that we transfer knowledge from better ecosystems or ecosystems that are well developed in the field to other ecosystems across the globe. So that's an important goal that we want to reach. It doesn't necessarily mean that we want to own intellectual property. We don't own intellectual property, but we want to ensure that breakthrough science or good quality breakthrough innovations are actually transferred from a region to another. Second, is we want to make sure that we develop talent. It's a nascent field. We're trying to educate people. We want to develop more talent into the field, especially junior faculty members. And Evolution has already started in these activities. We've announced a couple of programs with the American Federation of Aging Science. We've also announced a couple of funding opportunities for young talents specific to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and you can find all of these announcements online. Third is how do you ensure science moves into the market? This is a very critical part, because if someone is aware of the R&D ecosystem, there's an area that's called the Valley of Death, where people are actually not, it's an interesting area that needs more focus and it's high risk, but Evolution Foundation wants to move the science into the market and wants to focus on this specific area. So in a nutshell, all of us here share the same concern, and all of us want, everybody I'm sure is interested to know the answer to this specific question: how do we extend healthy lifespan? The answer is not, unfortunately, that simple. The reason behind it is that it's not only improving lifestyle and nutrition, which I don't say it's really important, but it's bigger than that. We need to understand the biological mechanism of aging, and this is how Evolution thinks we can intervene with increasing of age-related diseases. And not only that, we need the support of all. We need to emphasize that we recognize the scale and the economic impact of aging and accelerated aging, and the toll that it can have on individuals like all of us, and on different countries across the globe. Lastly, we need to learn from lessons learned from previous global challenges, like global warming. How did they tackle innovation? How did they address their challenges? How did they connect individuals across the globe to find a concrete solution? So in a nutshell, this is how I wanted to address the topic, and I'm very open to any questions, not only the questions that Dr. Yusuf has planned to ask me. So please.
Well, thank you very much for your very clear and very interesting presentation. I have some questions actually for Dr. Haya, but I think she has answered those questions. But during our discussion with regard to any kind of innovation or technology, we hear about the lights and shadows of these things. I mean, you've been talking about the positive aspects of the longevity. What would be the shadows you think is actually hanging above these issues of longevity and aging and increasing the lifespan? Yes.
So the bottlenecks that we face in terms of the field are actually mainly focused on how do we translate biological science into human applications, and I think this is the critical question. The reason why is we, as Evolution Foundation, work across the value chain, and each section of the value chain has their own challenges. Let's start off with biology. As I mentioned previously, we're a nascent field. We need to work and understand the biology of aging a bit more and identify the targets that we need to focus on. If we go to the preclinical trials, for example, in animals, these preclinical trials take a long time. There are new mechanisms that need to be established to accelerate clinical or testing on animal models. Third is how do we identify biomarkers? So how do I know that I'm actually aging quicker than anyone else? And that's also something that's very hard and we need to address. And the last, as I mentioned to you previously, and I mentioned in my previous slides, that we really need to have regulatory reform, developing new regulatory frameworks that actually address the field.
Right. So my government has been increasing the retirement age from 50 to 55 and then to 58 to 60. I mean, I'm sure there are some consideration on the health and capability of people reaching that age to perform their job.
Yes.
Would that create, side issues if we were to continue to do that and keep on increasing that kind of so-called ceiling on people's productivity and ability to perform?
A very interesting question. The answer is no, due to two main elements. The first is there is an increase or drop in workforce that's happening on a global level. So that's one. Second, we believe that if older people work, there's going to be more opportunities for jobs for the younger. So to address this, it is very important to increase productivity in the elderly. This will eventually increase also productivity in the younger generations.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Haya. I'd like to open the conversation to the people around the room. If you have any questions with regard to the topic to present to Dr. Haya. Anyone would like to start, please? Yes, Deborah. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for that outstanding overview. Question. I know you have some very interesting new models
Yes.
of how you're going to both identify potential research activities and how you will fund them, augmenting additional funding, whether it's in the U.S. or around the world. But that's a new model of innovation you're creating at Age Evolution.
Yes, thank you for highlighting this. So our model, as I mentioned, we are a global organization. So number one is we're going to have a global outreach. We are going to have hubs across the globe. That's one. Hubs across the globe in each geographical region across the globe where we are going to focus on the needs of that geographical region. So that's a very important thing. Second, which I think I should elaborate a bit more on, is we're heavily focused on partnerships. So most of our work is not done solo by Evolution Foundation. We don't really have in-house research activities. We connect the dots across the globe. So we bring the best talent across the globe and connect them with each other. And at the same time, not only that, attract scientists that focus on age and age-related diseases to look at the overall picture. That's the second thing. And the third thing is we're trying to create a very interesting model on how do we attract investors to actually understand the science and are willing to invest in aging in the aging field to move the science into the market. So it's a very challenging approach that we are creating across the globe, but unfortunately it has to be a customized approach. But the main thing is anything that we do is provided for all humanity across the globe. So it's not focusing on one geographical region. Let's take an example of one of the challenges that we had previously is, for example, COVID vaccine, where it was provided in certain geographical regions, but other geographical regions, it was difficult to provide these vaccines. And this is what Evolution wants to focus on in order to prevent this fragmentation that's happening across the globe.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
And where those may intersect or not. So, for example, at Oxford, there's a lot of research happening around cellular breakdown and trying to extend lifespan. And then many universities in the US, there's an enormous emphasis being placed on research around neurodegeneration and Alzheimer's and that sort of thing. And then there's this broader field around just healthy lifestyle and how that leads to better long-term outcomes. So I'm sort of wondering where you all sit in that and where you think sort of the focus is going to be and where the best outcomes may occur.
Thank you. This is a great question. So I think they all work together, but the focus of our organization is really to understand the biological mechanism of aging. Because we really truly believe that if we understand why disease is developed and accelerated while we age, we can actually prevent diseases that happen early in life. So we're not really focusing on lifestyle per se, but at the same time, we encourage people to live a healthy lifestyle. But our focus is specifically, as you mentioned, we're focusing not on specific diseases, but we're really trying to understand what happens in these 11 or these 9 hallmarks of aging that I mentioned previously, that if you look at them individually, they actually correlate to certain diseases. So one of them correlates to a cardiovascular disease, the other to cancer, and so on. So we're trying to look at them in a very holistic way, a very collective way, looking at the big picture and seeing how they interact together that cause this accelerated aging. So we're not really looking at certain diseases per se.
Right. Well, there's fiction that actually sometimes describe the future. A science fiction film, if everyone has seen, called In Time, where aging stopped at 25, and if you want to increase your lifespan, you have to pay for it. So that means the future may actually be leaning to those haves than rather than the have-nots. How do you see that this is going to be equally treated? You mentioned about the different regions where, in some regions the lifespan is shorter than others. They have different economic development. How would you ensure that the future will be quite fairly distributed in terms of this longevity?
Thank you. So I think the future, we need to get the buy-in of all. That's one. Evolution is a catalyst. Evolution is a connector. So it's not one geographical region versus the other. It has to be a collective approach. We're all humans. We share mostly the same DNA. However, we want to address this problem collectively. We're not really trying to solve certain economical problems per certain geographical regions.
Right.
We're trying to understand the science that will improve economy across the globe. So what we're trying to say here is let's understand the science. Let's try to mitigate the risk by understanding the science that will eventually lead to better economies across the globe.
Right. I think GFCC is the perfect platform to have this kind of conversations.
Yes.
You are collaborating with organizations outside of your country, with everybody. And then somebody mentioned about co-creation of some of these technologies that could actually be a cure for many of these diseases coming with age. So I guess the last message that you'd like to give to everybody around the table, maybe keep healthy.
The last note, this is important, of course,
Okay.
keep healthy, everyone keep healthy. But I think the most important thing is I would at least, I wish that I can manage to introduce this field and introduce the importance of this field and the importance of looking at this field as a global challenge and a global problem. And I think this is the role of evolution. I know we're a purely scientific organization. I'm a geneticist. However, there's a bigger picture here. We really need to collectively, so it's not only scientists, policymakers, regulators. We really need to tackle this issue collectively. And I hope that Evolution Foundation, with its structure, is able to do that. But we can't do that if we don't actually work together across the globe towards our mission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have another 2 minutes. Last question, if anybody likes to. Yes, please.
Rumors say, sorry, it's too loud. Rumors say that in the next book of Ray Kurzweil, which is a legendary figure talking about singularity, he says that in the next book he's talking that, he's forecasting that at 2030 we'll reach a point that then every year the life expectancy will increase every year. So probably we're going to reach a point that will be immortal. So I don't know if you have any comments on this.
Reality says that we are living longer. So that's the evolution of life. However, as I mentioned previously, we're living longer. Unfortunately, we're living longer with disease. And this is what's actually being seen across the globe. And what we aim to do is let's live longer by preventing disease. And we think that can add also another extra couple of years above what you just mentioned.
So I think as a conclusion, Dr. Haya, you have presented your case very, very well. I think it's up to GFCC to pick it up and maybe make it into a whole new discussion. And I think these may be opening up a lot of solutions to some of the other crises that we maybe have been discussing so far this year or maybe even before. So I think this aspect of longevity has to be taken seriously because it's going to be becoming worse and worse instead of becoming better and better. So we have to address it now, and then to help this, I think we have to bring a group that is very, familiar to this topic as Dr. Haya. I think we could actually develop some kind of discussions for the future. So Dr. Haya, thank you very much
you.
for your excellent
so much.
presentation and explanation. Thank you everybody for your indulgence and listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.